Good evening, and welcome. Tonight, we're diving into Ragnarok, the chillest apocalypse you'll ever hear about. It's got fire giants, world snakes, and a surprising amount of destiny for something that ends in total cosmic destruction. Before we settle in, what small, strange thing helps you fall asleep? Share it in the comments. It is oddly comforting to hear the little habits that help others drift off. If you enjoy divine drama, ancient magic, and mildly sarcastic storytelling, consider subscribing. Let's begin. You're standing in a place that isn't a place, because technically nothing exists yet. It's chilly. Not like forgot your hoodie chilly, more like the very essence of frostbite chilly. This is Niflheim, the realm of ice and fog, where breath freezes in your throat, and rivers are made of venom and despair. It's one corner of the cosmic equation, the other, Muspelheim, land of fire, flame, and what can only be described as lava having a bad day. Between them is the great cosmic void, Jingop. Imagine a yawning blackness where you could toss a pebble and it wouldn't hit bottom, or top, or even exist anymore. Now add time, or something like it. Add tension. Add the awkward chemistry of opposites. Eventually, because, apparently, even in voids, you can't avoid drama. The frost from Niflheim creeps across Ginnungagap and meets the heat from Muspelheim. What happens next is basically the mythic version of an accidental science fair experiment. The ice melts just enough, the fire cools just enough, and boom, life, sort of. Out of the melting frost seeps Ymir, the first being. He's a frost giant, sure, but he's also a one creature, ecology. From his armpits ooze more frost giants, and from his sweaty leg folds come even more. No one asks how reproduction works, because everyone's still trying to unsee the armpit thing. Then there's the primeval cow, Audhumla. She licks salty ice blocks, and like some kind of frosty 3D printer, slowly reveals a man named Buri, grandfather to Odin, the allfather of the gods. Yes, the mightiest god in Norse myth has a cow-licked ancestry. You'll never look at dairy the same way again. Historians still argue whether Ymir represents chaos, fertility, or just really intense personal space issues. But one thing is certain, the gods find him inconvenient. Odin and his brothers, Vili, and gang up and do what mythic siblings do best. They kill him, and not just kill, they repurpose him. From Ymir's corpse, the world is built. His flesh becomes the earth, his blood, the oceans, his bones, mountains, his teeth, rocks, his skull, that's the sky. You are literally walking on a meatball and living under a bone bowl. Sleep tight. And Ymir's blood, well, it drowns almost all the frost giants, except a couple, enough to make sure grudges stay alive for, all of time. One particularly salty survivor is Surtur, the fire demon of Muspelheim. He's big, he's burning, and he's holding a sword made of fire that he polishes every night while whispering, "One day." You trudge across this newly made world, aware that it's built from death, stitched together like a haunted IKEA catalog. It's beautiful, in that please don't look too close kind of way. Mountains jut like broken bones. Rivers hiss with serpents. The sky glows faintly from the embers Muspelheim flung across the heavens, what humans will one day call stars. Now the gods get to work. They shape Midgard, the world of humans, and build Asgard, their own deluxe cloud kingdom, complete with shimmering halls, gold decor, and a suspicious number of wolves. To keep frost giants out, the gods construct a giant wall. There's even a sketchy builder who offers to finish it quickly in exchange for the sun, the moon, and the goddess Freya. Red flag. Definitely. Loki, that lovable chaos gremlin, assures everyone it's a good deal. Spoiler, it isn't. Loki later shapeshifts into a mare, gets pregnant by the builder's horse, and gives birth to an 8-legged steed named Sleipnir. Fringe tidbit. This very weird horse becomes Odin's ride of choice. You'd think the All-Father of gods might choose a less biologically complicated mount, but here we are. As you explore this stitched-together cosmos, you notice something oddly chill about it. Not peaceful, just accepting. like a snow-covered tree that knows it'll snap one day and doesn't fight it. There's a faint thrum in the air, like destiny has been bookmarked, and everyone's too polite to say anything. The gods gather in their hall, Gladsheim, and create laws, sing songs, and throw back mead like there's no tomorrow. Which is funny, because in Norse myth, everyone knows there's a tomorrow, and it's terrible. That's the thing about Ragnarok. It's not just prophesied, it's practically on the calendar. No one knows the exact date, but everyone knows the ingredients you'll need. One wolf, the size of a fjord, to sun-devouring celestial predators. A few dead giants, with vendettas, an all-consuming firestorm, and a lot of screaming. It's a recipe you can't forget, or avoid. But for now, the gods try. They build, they breed, they bicker. They pretend the end isn't nipping at their heels, like a really persistent squirrel. They raise warriors in Valhalla for the final showdown. But they still party, like it's not all about to end in flame and wolf drool. There's a certain elegance to their denial. It's not lazy, it's just resigned. They know how it ends, but they live anyway, laugh anyway, love anyway. Maybe that's what makes them feel so human. You look around at the icy mountains, the firelit skies, the slow swirl of snowflakes descending through golden halls. Everything started in a void, born from opposites, shaped from death. And already, it feels like the ending is whispering through the trees. One mainstream historical fact: the Norse viewed time as cyclical, not linear. The world ends, sure, but then it begins again. That's why Ragnarok isn't just apocalypse, it's reset. It's kind of relaxing. In a doom dash is dash inevitable dash, but dash so dash is rebirth way. Like a snowstorm that wipes out your plans but gives you a day off. You breathe in cold air. You're not afraid. Not yet. The apocalypse is coming, but not tonight. It's not quite heaven, more like a divine cope full of oddly dysfunctional immortals with great hair and terrible impulse control. And at the center of it all is Odin, the Alftar, who stares into the middle distance like a man who's just realized he left the oven on for the last 10,000 years. Odin isn't your average bearded sky dad. He's a thinker, a plotter, a war general with a side hustle in poetry. And he's not above self-sacrifice for knowledge, literally. You follow him one windy afternoon as he approaches the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree, whose branches touch every realm and whose roots delve into the murkiest corners of existence. At the edge of the tree, there's a well. Mimir's well, to be precise. It's full of truth, secrets, and things that keep you up at 3 a.m. Odin wants a sip, but the price, his eye. Not metaphorically. He plucks it out like he's removing a contact lens and plops it in. Mimir gives him a drink, and suddenly, Odin sees everything. Past, future, all 9 realms, and probably next week's lottery numbers. You wince, but Odin barely flinches. That's how badly he wants to know. Historians still argue whether this sacrifice was a stroke of existential brilliance, or just a really graphic midlife crisis. For 9 days and nights, no food, no water, just a self-imposed timeout on the edge of death. Why? To unlock the power of the runes, the secret language of magic and fate. After nearly dying, he falls, clutching that knowledge like a cosmic cheat code. When he comes back, gaunt and half-glowing, everyone pretends they didn't notice he'd been dangling from a tree like a spiritual wind chime. But now he knows the runes, and that changes everything. They're the celestial bedtime, training endlessly for a war everyone knows they probably won't win. You hear one whisper over a dying warrior, and it's oddly comforting, like a lullaby laced with steel. Mainstream fact: the word Valkyrie comes from Old Norse Valkyrja, meaning chooser of the slain. Yeah, bedtime's going great so far. He's collecting fragments of fate, piecing together omens, and interrogating anyone who might know something about the end. Giants, gods, dead seers know one is safe from his side-eye. Even Volva, the ancient seeress, is dragged out of the grave to spill tea about the apocalypse. You try not to feel bad for her. Death is apparently not enough to escape unsolicited interviews. He listens to the creaking branches and the whispers of the Norns. The three fate weavers, who stitch together destiny like cosmic knitters. They sit beside the roots, carving runes into the bark, and muttering things no one understands until it's too late. They don't smile, they don't stop, they just weave. You glance at Odin's face. There's a tiredness behind that one remaining eye that says, I've seen how this ends, and I'm still doing it anyway. That's the scary part. Not the doom, the inevitability. He doesn't think he can stop Ragnarok. He just wants to understand it. Quirky tidbit: Odin once disguised himself as a wandering old man named Gangalari, just to quiz people about the universe. Imagine your grandpa showing up to trivia night, only he's actually a war god testing your grasp of metaphysics. Sometimes you see him pacing across Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that links realms. He's not admiring the view, he is watching the cracks. The bridge glimmers, yes, but it's also vulnerable. In the future, it'll shatter under the weight of invading giants and the dead. Like a glass escalator, overwhelmed by too many apocalyptic shoppers. They hope in the quiet way people do when they know hoping probably won't help. The gods go through the motions. Baldur, Odin's shining sun, dreams of his death. Frigg, in a panic, makes every object in the world swear not to harm him. Every object, except mistletoe, because it was too young to ask. A loophole. A god dies because of a loophole, but not yet. That tragedy waits. About a god who gave up part of himself for knowledge and still couldn't stop the end. There's a quiet humility to it, isn't there? For all his wisdom, Odin's not invincible, not even immortal, not in the can't die sense. The Norse gods age, bleed, break. They're like the universe's most overqualified mortals. Their story isn't about escaping fate. It's about walking toward it, eyes open. Well, eye open in Odin's case, and doing your best to outwit it with brains, guts, and maybe a rune or two. You lie back on the golden floor of Valhalla, watching torchlight flicker across its 1,000 rafters. Outside, the wind howls from Jotunheim. Far away, a wolf dreams of freedom, and Odin sits alone, carving runes into wood, whispering words from a future that already tastes like ash. You sit quietly on the edge of a god-sized fire pit, one leg swinging over the void as you watch Loki turn an apple inside out for no reason at all. He's not trying to impress you, he just gets bored easily. That's Loki for you, god of mischief, shapeshifter supreme, chaos with cheekbones. He grins, the kind of grin that suggests you should double-check your wallet and your moral compass. You ask him what he does around here. He shrugs, says, stir things up, and winks like he's not already responsible for at least 3 family feuds and a minor cosmological incident. Loki isn't technically a god. He's a Jatina frost giant who somehow got a VIP pass into Asgard's divine clique. Historians still argue whether he was ever truly accepted or just tolerated like a particularly clever raccoon. You can't bring yourself to chase off. Odin considers him a blood brother. Thor wants to hit him, often. The vibe's complicated. Let's talk about his resume. You trail after Loki as he shapeshifts into various forms: a salmon, an old woman, a horse, and finally settles into his normal self, slim, quick-eyed, and always looking like he's hiding a really juicy secret. Spoiler, he is. He fathers 3 infamous children with the giantess, Angrboda, whose name roughly translates to the one who brings grief, which feels a little on the nose, considering the offspring, Fenrir, a wolf the size of a cruise ship, with commitment issues and jaw strength measured in a Jarmungandr, the Midgard serpent, so massive he circles the world and bites his own tail, like a noodle in an existential crisis. Hel, a half-dead goddess who rules the realm of the dishonorably deceased with all the warmth of a DMV waiting room. The gods take one look at this little family and collectively go, nope, Fenrir, chained up. But more on that furry issue later. Jarmungandr thrown into the sea like unwanted leftovers. Hel, banished to the underworld. Go rule the dead, they say, like that's a normal thing to tell a child. You glance at Loki, who's watching the horizon with the look of a man who knows revenge ages like wine. Quirky tidbit. Despite all this, Loki also helped the gods more than once. He convinced dwarves to forge Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. He once stitched shut his own lips as punishment for going too far. He's a villain, a hero, a parent, and a troll, depending on the mood or the century. And then there's Sleipnir. Remember the wall builder from earlier? The one promised Freya, the sun, and the moon. Yeah, Loki fixed that by transforming into a mare, distracting the builder's stallion, and getting very distracted in return. Months later, out trots Sleipnir, an 8-legged stallion with turbo speed and an identity crisis. Loki gives the weirdest baby gifts. You can't help but admire him. He's not noble, he's not predictable, but there's a strange honesty in his dishonesty. He never pretends to be a hero. He just is. Loki is the storm in the middle of the plan. The whisper in the back of your mind that says, but what if? The gods try to contain him, set limits, define lines he can't cross. And yet, every time, Loki draws a mustache on the lines and dances right over them in opera gloves. There's one story you sit with for a while, one that makes the other gods nervous when it's mentioned. The death of Baldur, Odin's golden child. Baldur is handsome, kind, beloved. He dreams of his death, and Frigg, his mom, makes the entire world swear not to hurt him. Stones, fire, iron, diseases, all agree. Everything except mistletoe. Loki hears about this and thinks that's suspiciously poetic. So he fashions a tiny dart from mistletoe, gives it to H.R. Baldur's blind brother, and guides his hand. The dart strikes true. Baldur dies. The hall goes silent. No jokes, no excuses. The gods try to bring Baldur back. They ask Hel to release him. She agrees if everyone in the world weeps for him. And everyone does, except one old hag, who, surprise, turns out to be Loki in disguise. He prevents the resurrection just to prove a point. Be a jerk, flip fate the bird, doesn't matter. That's the moment the gods stop seeing him as family. They bind him with his own son's entrails, place a venom-dripping serpent over his head, and leave him trapped in a cave. His wife, Sigyn, catches the venom in a bowl, but every time she empties it, a drop hits his face. He writhes, screams, and legend says that's what causes earthquakes. You feel the ground shiver beneath you. A reminder, Loki's still down there, still hurting, still waiting. Mainstream historical fact. In Old Norse mythology, Loki doesn't have a consistent role. In some stories, he's helpful. In others, monstrous. He wasn't labeled a villain until centuries later, when Christianity crept into the sagas and everyone started needing a clear, good guy, bad guy, split. But Loki isn't about splits. He's the gray zone between order and chaos. The cosmic, maybe. The messy part of the family tree you'd rather not discuss at holidays, but also secretly admire for speaking his mind at the dinner table. And here's the kicker. Loki's not finished. Ragnarok doesn't just happen with him, it happens because of him. The gods' treatment of his children, the betrayal over Baldur, the cave, the venom, it all adds up. And one day, when the bindings snap and the serpent burns through rock, Loki will return. Not alone. He'll lead the enemies of Asgard into battle, riding a ship made of dead men's fingernails, bringing with him the rage of the ignored, the scorned, the misunderstood. But not tonight. Tonight, you sit with him in memory, watching him flip a coin that always lands on its edge. You drift now to the edge of a cliff in Jotunheim, where the wind bites like it's got something to prove. Here, in the land of the giants, nothing is subtle. Mountains loom like frozen fists. The rivers don't babble, they roar. And the snow, it doesn't fall, it plummets. This is where Fenrir howls. You hear it before you see him, a bone-deep, marrow-shaking vibration that ripples through the stone beneath your feet. Then, through the blizzard's blur, you spot him. Massive, black-furred eyes, like molten silver. A mouth that doesn't just open, it unfolds. Fenrir is no ordinary wolf. He's Loki's son, raised among the gods. At first, they tried to be chill about it. Odin figured, hey, Maybe we can raise him to be less apocalyptic. But it's hard to nurture when you're actively terrified of your adopted pet child eating the sun one day. So they fed him, praised him, trained him, even let Tyr, the god of war, bond with him. You see the two of them once, Tyr tossing a massive bone into the sky, Fenrir leaping after it like a puppy who doesn't realize he's already the size of a longboat. But Odin can't ignore the prophecy. He knows Fenrir is destined to kill him during Ragnarok. That wolf is a ticking, slobbery time bomb. So the gods make a decision. They decide to bind him. At first, they use simple chains. Fenrir snaps them like overcooked spaghetti. Then, thicker chains, same result. He yawns them into shrapnel. Finally, they ask the dwarves to forge something special, something unbreakable, impossibly strong, but light as a whisper. The result, Glipnir. You run your fingers over it, a ribbon smooth and silky, made from the sound of a cat's footsteps, the beard of a woman, the breath of a fish, bird spit, and a few other things that make zero sense and perfect sense at the same time. Historians still argue whether Gleipnir was meant to symbolize paradox or just served as a Norse excuse for poetic trolling. The gods approach Fenrir with it and say, "It's just a game, buddy. Try breaking this one." Fenrir narrows his eyes. He smells divine nonsense, so he agrees on one condition. Someone must place their hand in his mouth as a sign of trust. Thor steps forward. Brave Tom, the only one who's treated Fenrir like more than a prophecy in fur. The ribbon wraps around the wolf. He struggles, twists, snarls, and then nothing. He is bound. Realizing the trick, Fenrir clamps down. Thor loses a hand, doesn't scream, just watches his friend with quiet grief. You sit with that image for a moment. A god who sacrifices part of himself for the safety of the world, and a wolf who only ever wanted a fair shake. Quirky tidbit, Fenrir's name means fen-dweller, like he's some kind of swamp cryptid. But let's be real, this guy's closer to a four-legged apocalypse engine. As you turn away, you feel Fenrir's gaze, not hatred, not even anger, just a patient knowing he's waiting. And when the ribbon breaks, you'll hear it before you see him again. Next stop, underwater, not peaceful coral reefs and flirty mermaids. We're going deep, into the trench where Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, slumbers, or coils. You feel yourself sinking into dark, cold water. Pressure crushes your ears, your ribs. Then movement, a glimmer of scale. The ocean shifts, not because of a current, but because something vast is turning. Jormungandr opens one eye. His body wraps around Midgard, Earthtail in mouth, forming the ancient Ouroboros, self-devouring, endlessly circling, a living border. Legend says Thor once tried to fish him up. You can't resist picturing it. Thor in a boat, slamming down an ox head as bait. The line tugs, the water boils. Jormungandr rises, eyes glowing with ancient irritation. And just as Thor lifts his hammer for a final strike, the giant Hymir panics and cuts the line. The serpent sinks back. Thor throws the tantrum of the century. You imagine sea foam being flung like angry confetti. That unfinished fight, yeah, it's not over. Jormungandr isn't just some oversized eel. He's part of the world's balance. If he lets go of his tail, if he rises again, Ragnarok begins. No pressure, buddy. Mainstream fact. The Ouroboros symbol existed long before Norse mythology, showing up in Egypt and Greece as a symbol of eternity. The Norse just made it bitterer. And then there's Hel, Loki's third child. Half of her body is flesh, pale and alive. The other half, dead, rotting, wrapped in silence. You descend into Helheim, her domain. It's not fiery, not torturous. It's just cold. Still, the dead don't scream here. They wait. These are the souls who didn't die gloriously in battle. Farmers, servants, the unlucky. You expect Hel to rage, lash out. Instead, she regards you with an expression both regal and bonfire. Her throne is plain stone. Her crown is frost. She speaks in a voice that echoes as though it remembers every last goodbye. The gods cast her here, hoping to control her. Joke's on them. Hell rules this place, and one day she will empty it. The dead will march with her, their silence becoming a roar, and she won't be screaming vengeance. She'll be fulfilling the balance. Historians still argue whether hell was feared or simply misunderstood, whether she represented evil or just inevitability. After all, everyone ends up in someone's underworld eventually. You think about it as you climb out of the cold and back into the warmth of firelight. Loki's children, scattered, contained, underestimated, bound like kindling, waiting for a spark. And every story you've heard, every god you've met, seems to press gently against the same unspoken truth: this will not hold. You close your eyes, and somewhere far below, Fenrir growls, Jarmungandr stirs, Hell smiles, that half-living smile. You're not afraid, you're just aware. You wake to the sound of horns, low, rumbling things, like glaciers, learning how to sing. The sky is dark, and not in the romantic, stargazing way. More like the sun didn't bother to clock in today kind of dark. You squint upward and realize why. There are wolves eating the sky. Specifically, two of them. Skoll and Hati, giant, supernatural wolves who've been chasing the sun and moon across the heavens since basically forever. You imagine it like some cosmic Benny Hill chase, with celestial bodies zigzagging and the wolves panting with apocalyptic glee. Except this time, they catch them. Skoll swallows the sun, Hati gulps down the moon, and just like that, everything gets real quiet. No light, no time. Just the steady pulse of dread, like someone left the back door open and the wind smells like war. That's when you hear it. It's the horn of Heimdall, the ever-watchful guardian of the Bifrost, that rainbow bridge linking the realms. He sees everything, hears everything. The guy literally needs less sleep than an over-caffeinated owl. You remember that bridge, how it shimmered under your feet like someone spilled Skittles across a lightning bolt. Beautiful. Totally impractical. A nightmare for people afraid of heights. Now it groans and cracks, overloaded with the weight of what's coming. The horn's blast isn't just a warning, it's a declaration. Ragnarok has begun, and you're front row center. No refunds. The ground starts to tremble. You brace yourself, and then crack. The bindings holding Fenrir snap like floss. He rears up, all fur and fury and molars. You see the glint of his rage. He isn't just angry, he's betrayed, and he's not hunting prey, he's hunting Odin. Meanwhile, the ocean erupts, not crashes or swells. Like someone flipped the world upside down and shook loose its most venomous noodle. Jormungandr slithers into view, miles and miles of serpent, coiling around the world like a cosmic stress ball finally breaking. He spits poison, not metaphorical poison. Literal, melt your eyebrows off, poison that floods land, sky, and sea. Plants wither, rivers hiss, fish file lawsuits. And in the realm below, hell opens her gates. The dead gray-skinned, hollow-eyed, silent as fog march out. It's not a mob, it's a procession, controlled, measured, like time itself is walking to a drumbeat only they can hear. They're joined by the fire giants of Muspelheim, led by the truly flame-retired Surtur, sword ablaze, beard basically a lava fountain. He doesn't strut, he burns his way forward. His sword isn't just hot, it's heat itself. The moment he swings it, forests become cinders, and mountains sob lava. Historians still argue whether Surtur represents literal volcanic eruptions in Norse cosmology, or if he's just the most metal metaphor for uncontrollable destruction ever inked into a manuscript. You backpedal, breath-catching. The enemies of the gods aren't just here, they're everywhere. Fenrir, charging from the west, Jarmungandr from the sea, Hell's legions from the deep, Surtur from the south. Yeah, he's free, too, hair wild, eyes laughing in a way that makes your spine sweat. He's captaining a ship made of fingernails. Remember that one Naglfar, the grossest vessel in myth. Every nail ever untrimmed from the dead, glued together like the world's most horrifying Pinterest project. Loki stands at the prow like a chaotic Jack Sparrow, steering toward Asgard with a grin that says, "Told you I'd be back." Quirky tidbit. The Norse genuinely believed that proper grooming helped prevent the apocalypse. Every time someone died and wasn't trimmed, one more nail for Naglfar. Basically, hygiene as a sacred act. So yes, flossing may help save the world. Back in Asgard, the gods are suiting up. Odin dons his armor, black and silent. He rides Sleipnir, that 8-legged nightmare horse born from that one-time Loki. Well, you remember, the gods line up behind him, solemn, resigned. Even Thor looks serious. They all know how this ends. Ragnarok isn't a fight they win. It's a fight they must fight. You catch sight of Freyr, the fertility god, now wielding a sword, not his legendary blade, because he gave that away earlier to impress a giantess. Priorities, right? Now, he faces Surtur with what amounts to an enchanted butter knife. Spoiler, it doesn't go great. Odin rides out to meet Fenrir. They clash in a moment that swallows sound. Odin fights like a storm, but Fenrir devours him, not symbolically, literally. Then comes Odin's silent son, tall, strong, and with a boot made from all the leftover leather in the universe. No, seriously, every scrap, all the souls nobody used. He uses it to anchor Fenrir's jaw, pry it open, and kill him from the inside. Quiet vengeance, no victory dance. Then you turn toward Thor and Jormungandr. A grudge match, if there ever was one. Thor fights hard. You hear Mjolnir sing as it smashes scale after scale. He kills the serpent. But Jormungandr's poison is already in his lungs. Thor takes 9 steps, then falls. No speeches, no glory, just collapse. Even Heimdall and Loki meet in battle. They strike each other down simultaneously, as if neither can truly exist without the other. Watcher and trickster, order and entropy, dead in a final tie. By now, the earth is splitting, the seas boiling, the sky aflame. Surtur swings his sword one last time. The world burns, and for a while, there's nothing but silence. You lie back on scorched ground, smoke curling gently around your fingers. It's not hot anymore, just still. You realize something strange. This was never about winning. Ragnarok was never a preventable apocalypse. It was a reset, a reboot button with fire and wolves. Mainstream historical fact. Scholars agree that Norse myth didn't promise a perfect eternal afterlife. It promised cycles. The world ends, then it begins again. That's the hope hidden in the ashes. A new earth rises from the sea, green, fresh, sun reborn, to human survivors, but not yet. Right now, you sit in the moment after everything. After gods, after monsters, just silence, and the faintest heartbeat of renewal beneath the soot. You close your eyes. You don't need light. You've seen enough. Smoke still clings to your skin like memory, old, bitter, and oddly comforting. You're sitting in what's left of everything. The bones of the world are bare, charred, black, and steaming. But somehow, you're not afraid. You're just listening. Because even in ruin, the world whispers. And the whisper starts with Yggdrasil. You look up, Pifub still has meaning. The great world tree, once teeming with leaves and bright with songbirds, now leans like a weary giant. Its branches are scorched. Some are broken, some still smoldering, and 1 or 2 miraculously green, barely. This tree held the 9 realms. It fed the heavens. Its roots reached into time itself. Now, it creaks like old floorboards in a house no one lives in anymore. Yet, it's alive. You place your hand against its bark and feel something stubborn, pulsing underneath. Not triumphant, not even hopeful, just persistent, like a dandelion growing through concrete. You wander toward one of the roots and find a squirrel Ratatosker, that gossipy little menace, still alive, still twitchy. You almost laugh. Apocalypse-proof vermin, apparently, he chitters at you as if nothing happened, still trying to stir up beef between the eagle up top and the serpent below. Yes, that serpent, unHGGR. You can just make out his slithering, half-charred bulk coiled near the deepest root, feasting on corpses, even now. Because some cycles just refuse to break. Quirky tidbit. In some versions, Ni HGGR actually flies out of hell with corpses draped from his wings, like a grim flag carrier for the end of days. Is he escaping Ragnarok, finishing it, or just doing his job? Historians still argue whether Ni-Hggr is a cosmic janitor, or something far more sinister. Not everything died. Not everyone, either. From the shelter of Holt, a hidden grove that somehow ducked the end of the world like a really shy woodland creature, emerge and the last humans. No grand entrance, just a slow, blinking shuffle into light. They look rough, dirty, confused, but they're alive. And with them, something ancient and holy stirs. Life. Not capital L life, the kind that demands purpose and Twitter bios, but lowercase, honest, hiccuping life. The kind that pokes through ashes and shrugs. Okay, now what? You follow them through the grove. New streams bubble underfoot. Grass pushes up through soot like green defiance. Animals emerge gored, tentative. The first sunrise. It's not explosive. It's shy, gentle, like a toddler learning to walk on clouds. And then, out of that sunrise, Balder. You remember him, the beautiful god, the golden boy, who died from a mistletoe dart, killed in a prank gone fatally sideways, and mourned by everyone but that one cranky giantess. Balder returns now from the realm of the dead. His face is changed, less perfect, more kind. He steps onto the new earth, like someone waking from a nap that lasted epochs. With him comes HR, his accidental murderer. They walk side by side, no grudges, just understanding. It's strange, isn't it? The new world begins with forgiveness. Historians still argue whether this ending, this quiet rebirth, was added later, an attempt to soften the bleakness of total destruction. But whether ancient or edited, it holds a certain peace. You sit beneath a half-healed Yggdrasil, listening to the wind rebuild language. You hear new words forming, names of trees that haven't grown yet, animals not yet born, songs no one's written. The gods who survived begin to gather the Silent One, and the sons of Thor, Magni and Modi, who now wield their father's hammer. It's so big in their hands, it looks like they're borrowing it without permission. They don't throw parties, they don't carve runestones. They plant things. You watch as seeds are pressed into the still warm soil. Maybe this time, no one has to be bound, tricked, or devoured. Maybe. Quirky aside, there's an old belief that time in Norse myth isn't linear. It loops, which means Ragnarok may not be the end, but just another point on a circle, like a record spinning on an ancient divine turntable, round and round. As for Loki, he's gone, for now. But remember that glint in his eye, that sideways smile. You wouldn't be surprised if he snuck back in as a breeze, a strange bird, or a misfiled dream. Tricksters are like glitter, you never really get rid of them. And what of the beef? It's gone, crumbled. Rainbow shards scattered across the heavens like cosmic confetti. But some say it'll be rebuilt. Maybe not a bridge this time. Maybe a path, a whisper, a choice. You stretch out in the grass. The warmth is real. The silence isn't heavy anymore. It's soft, inviting. There's something deeply human about this version of the apocalypse. No perfect clean slate, just continuity. We wreck, we rebuild, we remember. Not as punishment, not even as lesson. Just as part of the rhythm. Mainstream historical fact, the prose Edda and poetic Edda, our primary sources for this myth, were compiled by Christian scholars centuries after Norse paganism began fading. Some argue the rebirth narrative was Christianized, an echo of resurrection stories. But that doesn't dim its beauty. You lie still and wonder, is it better that the world doesn't end with triumph, but with quiet survival? That even after gods die, wolves rampage, and the sea vomits serpents, two humans crawl out of the dark and try again. Yeah, that's kind of beautiful. The new world doesn't need fanfare, it just needs someone to live in it. And now that someone is you, you lie back in the grass, arms stretched, legs heavy, eyelids doing that fluttery thing where they can't quite decide if they're curtains or bricks. The air tastes different, now no longer fire and venom, but something more delicate. Dew, morning fog, possibly hope, with a pinch of leftover ash. The world has survived, but survival doesn't mean restored. This isn't Asgard 2.0, with bonus features and fewer end-of-days updates. It's a world without manuals. No gods dictating order from on high. Just sky, soil, and the low hum of possibility. And that, honestly, is terrifying. You hear it in the way the wind moves in certain. Not a command or prophecy, but a question. Everything around you feels like a blank canvas, and you're holding a dripping paintbrush with no idea where to begin. So you begin small. You watch Magni and Modi, the Thunder Twins, building something near the roots of the cracked world tree. Not a temple, not a fortress, just a shelter. With hands still raw from battle, they tie reeds and lift beams. Mjolnir sits nearby in the grass, humming quietly, like even the hammer needs a nap. You feel this slow pace, this rebuilding without blueprints. There's no one barking orders. The gods who remain don't rule anymore. They help. Vidar lifts fallen trees without speaking. Hador, the guy who accidentally murdered his brother now, tends to new growth like a soft-spoken gardener. Quirky tidbit. Some fringe interpretations say Hador was never blind, at all just misled. Either way, he's here now, placing sprigs of green into soil like he's apologizing with every gesture. You're not sure who he's apologizing to, maybe everyone. You stand and walk. There's something meditative about the silence, the absence of prophecy. Because, remember, this whole apocalypse, it was predicted. Odin knew the outcome. He knew he would die. He sought it out. He wandered the world, collecting fragments of fate, trading his eye, hanging from Yggdrasil, all to understand a destiny he could never change. Did ancient Norse society truly believe their end was inevitable? Or were these stories a kind of existential comfort blanket? Don't worry, even gods can't dodge the doom train. And there, near the horizon, glides something familiar, still winged, still horrible, but now different, slower. He's not dragging corpses this time. He's not devouring roots. He flies with the kind of caution usually reserved for people checking expiration dates on milk. And you wonder, what's his role now? Like an ancient clock's pendulum swinging back toward chaos. You wave at him, because, why not? He doesn't wave back. Not the gods. It's Leif and Lithrisur, sitting by a stream, arguing over how to build a fire. Not with divine lightning or enchanted flint, just two rocks and a stubborn pile of twigs. It's like watching the first YouTube survival challenge, only it's the entire future of humanity at stake. You watch them bicker, then laugh, then succeed. The flame catches, smoke curls, and for the first time since everything shattered, warmth returns, not from destruction, but from creation. There's no grand revelation here, no booming voice from the sky declaring new order initiated. There's just this moment, smoke, laughter, and two humans realizing they're not extinct. That's it. That's the victory. You help stack some stones for a makeshift hearth. The fire crackles like it's clearing its throat. Because if this is the reboot, then what comes next is entirely unwritten. You're not just a spectator anymore. You're part of the next myth. No pressure. Mainstream historical fact. The Poetic Edda includes a mysterious final stanza in the Voluspa poem that speaks of a hall, golden and radiant, rising out of the sea. Some scholars believe it implies a new paradise, a new divine realm. Others say it was tacked on for Christian influence. But you don't see gold halls. You see pine. You see birds. You see dirt under fingernails and sunlight that doesn't judge. You lie down again near the edge of the clearing. Overhead, the stars are blinking on, faint at first, then steadier. They're not the same constellations you remember. It's like the sky got reset too, and is now slowly remembering its lines. A squirrel hops across your chest, Ratatoskr again. Apparently, he's adopted you. You let him. Not everything needs to make sense. Not now. Quirky observation. The Norse didn't write down their myths until centuries after conversion to Christianity. For most of their lives, these tales were oral, changing a little with each telling. That means even Ragnarok, the final word, was never truly final. It morphed, softened, grew teeth, and then dulled them again. Story as survival mechanism. You feel a breeze, cool, smelling faintly of pine smoke and damp grass. And maybe, just maybe, a hint of mead from somewhere far off, as if the fallen gods still toast in the ruins of Valhalla. You close your eyes, not from weariness, but from fullness. The old world cracked, the gods died, the monsters screamed, and yet here you are, breathing, watching firelight dance on someone else's cheeks, listening to the chirp of a bird that wasn't supposed to survive. It's not the apocalypse you expected. It's quieter, stranger, more patient, and weirdly enough, chill. You're not sure how long you've been sitting by the fire. Could be hours, could be 1,000 years. Time feels loose now, like an oversized sweater, cozy, but a little slippery around the edges. The stars blink above like curious eyes. You hear them, in a way, not with your ears, but somewhere deeper, like they're testing out new patterns, wondering what kind of constellations this new world deserves. No more warriors etched in starlight. Maybe a sleepy cat, a steaming cup, a quietly persistent dandelion. Your fire crackles, and someone hands you a cup carved from wood. No label, no logo, just warmth. It smells faintly of pine and fermented berries, primitive mead, maybe, or possibly a future energy drink. Hard to tell in the dark. Nearby, Lifthrasser laughs, this time not at fire-starting failures, but because Magni just dropped MG Lanier on his foot and tried to pretend it didn't hurt. You know that totally fine face. It's the same one people make when they trip in public. You stretch out, let the sounds of this post-apocalyptic picnic wash over you. It's surreal, it's sweet, and it's nothing like the burning, screaming Ragnarok you were warned about. But just when things seem like they're settling, you feel it, a tremor, not in the ground, but in the air, like something ancient turning over in its sleep. You look to the horizon, and there shimmering, just above the treetopses, a flicker of color, red, gold, violet, a spectrum, a shimmer, a memory. The Bifrost, it's not solid yet, not walkable, but it's trying. You can almost hear it, humming, tentative, curious, maybe even a little shy. Historians still argue whether the Bifrost's destruction was permanent, symbolic, or just paused, like an old DVD menu. Some say the bridge will never return, that the connection between realms is lost forever. Others think it rebuilds itself when needed, like some cosmic Wi-Fi signal coming back online. You stand and walk toward the flicker. Not to cross it, there's nowhere to go, but just to witness. And as you walk, the world shifts again. You begin to see echoes, not ghosts exactly, just impressions, reminders. Here's a grove where Freyr fell in battle. His golden boar, now nothing but a patch of overgrown grass, shaped oddly like a tusk. There's the plain, where Thor and Jormungandr battled deep gouges in the earth, filled now with wildflowers and runoff. The scars of war are everywhere, but the earth isn't hiding them. It's growing through them. Mainstream historical fact. Many scholars believe the Norse didn't view death and destruction as ends, but as transitions. They saw the world in cycles, creation, growth, destruction, rebirth. Ragnarok wasn't a final note. It was just a shift in rhythm. You wander farther. The shimmer of the Bifrost dims behind you. The stars get bolder. You realize you're not just looking at sky anymore. You're looking at possibility. What comes next? Well, the myths get vague here. Maybe intentionally. Baldur might lead the new world, or maybe he'll just walk beside others. Loki's children, those terrifying beasts, are gone or buried, or, if you believe some fringe ideas, waiting in forms you can't recognize yet, like viral memes or expired condiments. Quirky tidbit. Some modern scholars interpret Ragnarok as an allegory for climate catastrophe. Seriously, they point to the frozen Fimbulwinter, the rising sea, the firestorms, the collapsing social order. It's basically a mythological TED Talk with wolves. You chuckle at that because it tracks. But unlike TED Talks, Ragnarok didn't end with applause. It ended with gardening. You pass a stream where someone has carved tiny runes into the stones. No great prophecies, just names. You recognize a few. Not gods, not warriors, just people someone remembered. Maybe that's the secret. The world isn't rebuilt by power. It's rebuilt by memory. You walk until your feet ache. Then you sit again because, let's be honest, post-apocalypse cardio is exhausting. A breeze brushes past, and you smell something faint. Not fire, not rot. Something new, fruit. You follow your nose and find a young tree, just a sapling. But nestled in its low branches is a single, bulbous, not quite identifiable fruit. You poke it. It doesn't explode. Good sign. You bite into it. It tastes like apple and honey, and maybe a little regret. It's not perfect, but it's yours. This, you think, is the shape of the new world. Not kingdoms or crowns, but weird fruit, accidental jokes, and long walks under an unfamiliar sky. And here's a thought. What if the new myths won't be about gods at all? What if they're about you? You, the one who watched the sky burn and stayed behind to rebuild. You, who befriended a talking squirrel and didn't flinch when the sea monster waved goodbye. You, who eats unverified fruit in the dark and calls it courage. Mainstream debate. Some argue that Ragnarok's rebirth sequence wasn't part of the original oral tradition, that the Viking Age Norse didn't believe in a soft, hopeful epilogue, but that Christian scribes added it later for narrative comfort, a kind of divine aftercare. But you know what? You don't care. Because even if this ending was a remix, it feels true. And after everything burned, that's enough. You lie back again. The stars are no longer just watching their winking. You imagine them whispering, they made it. Somehow, the fire's gone low now, just embers. But they're warm, persistent, like memory, like hope, like you. You close your eyes not out of fear, not from grief, but from contentment. Because the world didn't end, it changed. And you're still here, not as a warrior, not as a god, but as a witness, a wanderer, a builder. And in this soft, strange silence, you smile. You wake not with a jolt, not from a nightmare, but with that gentle, floaty sense of having slept somewhere safe. Your back is sore from the uneven ground. Your hair smells like smoke and pine needles, and there's probably a bug crawling across your ankle. And still, you feel good. The air is cool again. Somewhere nearby, water trickles. Someone hums a tune you don't recognize. It's out of key, but that makes it better. Somehow, more real. You sit up and stretch, and the world stretches with you. A few steps away, you spot the silent god, working with a group of people humans. Mind you, not gods, to build a wall. Not a fortress wall, more like a windbreak. Logs stacked, braced with vines and mud. It's crooked in spots, and probably not up to modern code, but no one seems to mind. And right there, beside them, Ratatoskr, still alive, still judging. He's perched on a log, like a tiny, disapproving foreman. The world isn't being rebuilt the way it was. No glittering temples, no eternal feasts, no enormous golden halls filled with swordplay and shouting. You know, Viking heaven type stuff. This is slower, softer, a return to earth. You wander closer, half expecting someone to hand you a hammer or a shovel, or maybe a bucket of regrets to rinse. Instead, they hand you bread. Warm, dense, flat, charred on one edge. You bite into it, but it's filling, and it's shared. And right now, that's everything. Remember how the Norse myths were passed down orally, warped a bit each time someone told them over a fire, or shouted them during a storm. You feel that spirit here, too. Someone near the wall is telling a story about a wolf who swallowed the sun and got a stomachache. It's not accurate, but it's hilarious. You join the small circle of listeners, and for a while, there's nothing but laughter. Long pauses, and someone attempting a wolf impression that sounds suspiciously like hiccups. The fringe detail. Some scholars believe Norse myths weren't originally linear at all, that they were told like puzzle pieces, overlapping and flexible. Ragnarok wasn't an endpoint, it was just one square in a massive quilt of tales. It wasn't supposed to tie everything up. It was supposed to unravel it so you'd want to sew it back together. And that's what's happening now. The gods that remain don't sit on thrones. They sit on logs, or in the dirt, or shoulder deep in rebuilding what matters. Homes, fire pits, rituals, no one's fully decided on yet. HR and Balder are walking together in silence. Occasionally they pause and turn toward the trees, as if expecting someone else to appear. Maybe Nanna, Balder's lost love. Maybe just the old world. They never say, but you know the look. Historians still argue whether Balder's resurrection symbolizes a Christian influence or a native Norse idea of cyclical purity, life reborn after cosmic cleansing. Either way, here he is, laughing quietly. No light beams, no chorus, just a guy trying to figure out how to skin a fish with a rock. You try to help. You fail. He thanks you anyway. It occurs to you now, this apocalypse wasn't about the gods dying. It was about you realizing they could. That they weren't above suffering. They sought it, embraced it. Odin walked into his death with open arms. Thor smashed his way through fate and barely looked back. Even Loki, mad, clever, frustrating Loki, knew the cost. The new world is quieter because of them. Not because they're all gone, but because they've made space. You wander down a path, half overgrown, lined with odd rocks and mushrooms. At the end is a stream, wider than before. The water is clearer now. Fish dart between stones like flickers of silver thought. You catch your reflection in the water. You look older, wiser, sleepier. Quirky. Side note. The Norse didn't really have a concept of linear personal growth the way we do. Their heroes often cycled through the same flaws and victories over and over again, like reruns of your favorite morally questionable TV show. They didn't level up. They endured. So you, sitting here by the stream, aren't a shining new being. You're a version of yourself that made it. And honestly, that's enough. Someone nearby is building a kind of calendar. Stones arranged in patterns, bones laid out to track seasons. It's primitive, as if time itself needs to be wooed back into existence. The sky begins to cloud over nothing dramatic, just a soft roll of gray and a distant promise of rain. People don't panic, they just adjust, tie up roofs, shift the fire under shelter, pull you into the center where it's warm. You notice, now, how different the silence is. Before, it was eerie, like the world had stopped breathing. Now, it's restful. The silence of a nap, a held hand, a page turning. And in that silence, a new kind of myth is starting to form, not through epics or carved stones, but through the small, stubborn acts of living, like someone teaching a kid to tie knots, or someone humming a pre-Ragnarok lullaby they barely remember, or you holding a stick and poking the fire just because it's there. This isn't the part the skalds would have sung about. Too mundane, no dragons, no flames, just life. But you realize this is the part that matters. Because the glory of Ragnarok wasn't in the ending, it was in the refusal to stay ended. And you're part of that refusal. A gentle rain settles in, not dramatic, not symbolic, just wet. The kind of rain that doesn't rush you indoors, but persuades you to slow your steps. Let your shoulders relax, and maybe pretend you're in a moody indie film. The logs hiss softly where the fire used to be. People wander in and out of shelters, fashioned from bark, woven branches, and what may or may not be parts of Fenrir's old collar, recycling. You nod in approval. The earth no longer feels like it's holding its breath. It exhales. With every drop of rain, the dust of the old world sinks deeper into the soil, and the new world roots itself a little more firmly. You walk down a winding trail marked with half-familiar runes. Some are old, Odin's spear, Thor's hammer. Others are newer, scratched in with childish hands runes for laughter, for soup, for naps. You're pretty sure one just means goose, but you like it. Mainstream historical fact. Norse runes weren't just letters, they were believed to carry power. People carved them into swords, into gravestones, even into everyday spoons. They weren't just about writing, they were about willing the world into shape. And here, that tradition continues. one clumsy spoon rune at a time. As you round a bend, you stumble into something unexpected. A goat, not Tangrisnir or Thor's legendary chariot pullers, but a very ordinary goat. Mismatched horns, muddy hooves, a look that says, I survived the apocalypse and I'm still unimpressed. You stare at the goat stares back. You share a moment, then it walks away. It's oddly reassuring. You pass a grove of young trees, thin, bright green, barely taller than you. Each one has a nameplate. Some of the names you recognize, Freya, Idun, even Heimdall. Others are new, or someone has begun honoring not just what was lost, but what comes next. Historians still argue whether the Norse truly believed in reincarnation, or if that idea was another Christian era overlay. There's no hard evidence, just whispers. But standing here, you feel like the gods aren't gone. They've just decomposed into everything else. A child runs past you barefoot, laughing, her hair braided in the old style. She yells something about catching thunder in a jar. You smile, you hope she does. You find a flat stone and sit. The rain has stopped, and the clouds part in that dramatic, painterly way that would seem heavy-handed in fiction. But here, it feels just right. Sunlight spills over the hills, touches the tops of the trees, glints off the stream, and lands on you like a soft command. Rest. Quirky tidbit. There's an obscure Norse legend, barely a footnote, about a squirrel who hid a seed in a knot of Yggdrasil, thinking it might regrow the world one day. No battle, no prophecy, just quiet, squirrely optimism. You like that story, even if it's made up, especially if it is. Across the glade, someone starts singing, not loud, not skilled, but earnest. It's a song about the sun, or possibly cheese. Hard to tell. You lie back on the stone, warmed by light and the absurdity of it all. And for the first time since you found yourself on this scorched, mythic earth, you feel ready. Not for a fight, not for a quest, just for what's next. Because here's the truth. Ragnarok was never about the end of everything. It was the end of how things were. The cycle didn't break. It just turned a corner. You survived the gods collapsing, the monsters roaring, the sky splitting. You witnessed it all and didn't flinch. Okay, maybe you flinched a little when Jarmungandr blinked at you. Understandable. But now you get to plant something. Maybe not an actual tree. Maybe just a habit, a story, a memory. But that's how new worlds begin. You close your eyes, letting the sun pull your breath slower, longer, softer. Around you, life clicks into place. Birds return to forgotten nests. Grass pushes through ash. Someone laughs in the distance, and it echoes like prophecy. The apocalypse didn't win. You're still here. And in this quiet, rebuilding world, that's enough. So now, as your breath slows, and your limbs melt gently into whatever you're lying analog, a mossy bed, or maybe just a very squishy memory, know this: the world turned, it burned, and yet it bloomed again. Not all at once, not with trumpets or heroes, but with footsteps, shared bread, and stubborn little seeds that didn't know how to quit. You were there for the end, and you stayed for the beginning. Let that settle into your bones. Let your eyelids grow heavy with starlight. Let the wind carry away whatever weight you don't need anymore. There will be more stories tomorrow, new ones, made by hands like yours. But for now, you've earned stillness. You've earned rest. The gods are sleeping. The monsters are gone. The fire is out. All that's left is you and the slow, silent promise of something beautiful coming next. Just breathe. The chill apocalypse is over. And you're home.